Well, welcome back. Back to the 2010 Nissan Altima 4-cylinder. Needs front brakes. We're going to do front brakes. Shooting outside today because I have something going on in the garage. Can't really get in there, so we'll see how the lighting goes. But just basic maintenance needs to be done. It's got a real bad rotor shake. You can feel it in the wheel. So I'll show you the parts we'll use, and we're just going to go through and do brakes. All right, we're going to get a screwdriver in here and just kind of press the piston in a little bit to kind of loosen it up on the caliper so I can move it. Makes it easier to get off of there. I think these are 14 millimeter. I believe. So I'll do the caliper slide pin bolts. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I can't see really because the sun's kind of getting me. There's one. Bottom here, get the other one. Just kind of set this up out of the way. It's got plenty of pad life, but I think this car's been sitting for a little bit. And they're just terrible. It's shaking like crazy right now. We come in here, take 22 millimeter. Break these loose. These were not very tight on the other side, so I figured they're not very tight on this side either. It's kind of strange. I just did a wheel hub on the driver's side of this. I'm on the passenger side, and the axle nut was not very tight. It was not loose, but I actually could spin it off by hand without putting a socket or a wrench on it, and that's not cool. So these seem to be, the top one was loose. This one is not, but that top one was loose too. By loose, I mean you really didn't have to do much to get it undone. The bottom one's not, and these should be. You should be about almost 100 foot-pounds. So that top one was definitely about 100 foot-pounds. See how they're kind of stuck to the rotor here. The pads are stuck in the caliper, in the bracket. Not cool. So see, that's what rust does. You use sandpaper, or depends on how, Scotch Brite, depends on how heavy it is. I'm just going to come in here. I like to do this before I push the piston back in because I don't have to worry about hitting the boot doing this. Okay, these are not too bad, so not too heavy. With the back of the tabs as well. Hopefully you can still see this right. Just going to put an old pad in there. You can do this with a C-clamp, big pair of channel locks. This little tool for it. It works fine. Now that it's clean, I'll push it in. We want to check your master cylinder reservoir. If it's full right to the top, you might want to take a little bit out before you do this. Push that back in. You'll feel it bottom out. Bottomed out. That's it. Now, this dust boot looks pretty good. No problem. Sometimes these will get air in them, and if that happens, you want to go in with a small screwdriver or a pick right along the outside edge of the piston. And don't put a hole in the boot. You want to kind of go in and just kind of pry it away from the piston a little bit, and you'll hear it. It'll burp the air out of it. This one doesn't have that issue. don't have to do anything to it. I'll show you what you need to do though. I just got a small pick. And what I'll do, I'm going to keep it angled towards the piston, just kind of sneak it back in there. Don't poke a hole in anything, and just kind of pry it away. And actually that did collapse a little bit. You see that groove wasn't there all the way around, so there was a little bit of air in there. And that's all I did was kind of do that, pry it away, let the air out of it, and then it's fine. So now that we're done with that, we can grease. You want to grease any metal where it's going to touch the back of the pads. So we're going to grease in here, basically the face of this piston, just on the metal part. It's brake grease, it has to be brake grease. And then we're going to the back of these tabs where it rides against the outside pad, we're going to put a thin coat of grease on that as well. And what we're doing here is keeping moisture off of it and keeping corrosion from starting. Because corrosion tends to be what gets in there and pushes the pads around, and they don't work right. Your brakes don't last as long, and they don't work like they should. That's it for that. It can be tough sometimes. You see all the rust coming off of it. Let me get the air hammer. I can just try here without the air hammer first. If I need to, I can get it. Yep, there we go. Not too bad. Just break it loose. We want to clean the face of this hub. This one's not too bad actually. And then we're going to put a thin coat of grease on here, high temp grease. All that does is helps to keep the rotor from sticking to it. Thin coat of grease on there. I use fully coated rotors, so it doesn't really matter. If you don't have a fully coated rotor, you see how I had to beat that rotor a little bit to get it off of there. Or fully coated, yeah, if you don't use fully coated. But you can use high temp grease, or I just use brake grease because I have it here. You don't want a ton, you just want a thin coat. All you're doing is the same thing as everything else. You're trying to keep the moisture from getting on here and starting corrosion. Get it around there, good. That's it. Part number, I don't even know if you can see that, but there it is. Element 3 Raybestos. Fully coated rotors, that's what I use, that's what I like. I haven't had any issues with them. And I do find that fully coated for where I live, this area, it just lasts longer because it's rust that kills it. Alright, let's just stick that on there. Let's stick a spacer on here. Started? Yeah, okay. All it does is hold it in place for us. You can see that is locked up in there. I mean, it's just completely locked up. That's what happens when rust gets them. Always change the hardware, new hardware. So we're going to come in behind where the hardware sits, and we're going to come in here and clean this corrosion. These are not too bad, but if it's corroded, you can't just use a wire wheel on them. I'll finish with a wire wheel, but if it's heavy, it's just going to polish it. So you're going to come in here with a file. I have a coarse file and I have a regular file, and we're just going to clean this corrosion off of here. This is my coarse to take the heavy stuff, just knock it off of there. Trying to stay out of your light here. Not that this light's doing you any good. Come in here. Hopefully I'm in the screen because I can't tell. I can't see. So, I think I am. We're just going to clean these off. Do this on both ends. Once again, you're not trying to take metal off. You're just trying to take the corrosion out of here. Get the corrosion off of it. I'm going to take this over the wire wheel. I'm going to finish it up. I'll bring it back when I'm done. Alright, clean them out really well. Just drop one of my pins out. Hopefully you can see. I don't know what you can see, what you can't see, but it's all cleaned. We will put new hardware behind this. I'm going to pull the pins and see if there's any problems with them. These actually, that one came right out. It's pretty clean. This one's moving. It's not locked up. This one has a bushing on the end of it. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not with all the grease, but there's a bushing on the end of that one. So remember where it goes. Put it back in the one that came out of, I should say, back in the one that came out of. These are pretty clean. If they weren't clean, I'd go in here, clean it out, and probably with a bronze brush on a drill, clean it out really well, make sure there's no corrosion, they're not locked up, and re-grease them. We're going to re-grease them. I use Permatex silicone formula. That's what I use for slide pins and anything where there's a rubber boot. Has to be brake grease. That actually looks really good. It's not corroded at all, so we'll do, since these are pretty clean, we'll stick the boot back in. Make sure it's seated. Get a little bit of grease here. Make a mess. A little bit. You don't need a ton. So, just a thin coat, kind of on it here. Make sure you get some in the groove around the top, up on my fingers there. That's where moisture tends to get in, if it's going to get in. Goes past there. Take that. Stick that back in. Get it seated well. Get the excess off of there. I don't need. Now, you see how it's pushing it out? Pushes it right back out. Same deal, gets air in it. So squeeze it in. Take a little screwdriver or a pick. Don't poke a hole in it. Go in along the top here. Pry it. Come on. There, you hear it crack there. Like, now it's not pushing it back out. All the air's out of it. That's what we want to do. Both sides, same thing. This other one. Get the boot off of it. We'll set the boot right back in there. Good. Clean it off. I would wire wheel these if they had some corrosion. Take them over to the wire wheel and clean them up. If they're really bad, like this one has a little corrosion around the top, I'm going to go wire wheel that right around here just to get that corrosion off there. If they're really bad, you need to replace them. Let me go fix this. Alright, clean the corrosion off of it. Same as the other one. Thin coat. A little bit around the top here. Get it all over my gloves. Okay. In there. Kind of turn it. Make sure get the excess off. Burp it. Get the air out of it. There we go. It's ready to go. Well, at least the boots are. We've got to. I use Ceramic Extreme by Permatex for metal to metal. I don't use it for boots because I've never had a problem with it, but I've heard other people who have had a problem with it, and so I don't want to have a problem with it. Got my new hardware. I'm going to come in behind where this hardware sits and put a thin coat of grease in here. I'm doing the same thing I mentioned a couple times already. Just trying to keep moisture from getting in there and starting corrosion. This grease I like better for this. It's a little different consistency. I just like it better. I think it sticks in there a little better than the other stuff I use for the boots. Alright, same thing on this side. You don't need a lot, but you got to get a coating on it. I'm trying to stay out of your light here. Not doing too well, but okay. ready to go. Let's get the pads in there. Let's try that. Now these pads have those indicators on all 4 pads, so these little tabs that stick out, whatever end that indicator's on. Alright, so this sits like this. So these pads are going to go like this. This has to go inside that loop. Okay? Inside this loop when you put it on. Make sure you do that. 98 foot-pounds. We're going to put this back on. Got one started, the top one started. Let me run them in. I'll torque them, but for now I just want to run them in and get them close, get them snugged up. Okay, now let's put the pads in rather than fight with it all the time. I'll show you the outside one and then I'll put the inside one in when you can't see it. Set my bottom in here. These, the way these are made, these little things here, they get in the way sometimes. So you have to kind of tilt it in and get it like that. My shim's coming off. That's great. We'll do the same thing on the inside, which you won't be able to see, but same as that. Same deal. It's ready to go. Got my caliper back ready. Make sure when you put this down, you don't twist this line all up. You don't want that all twisted up into a pigtail. Push the pads in. I knew I was going to do that. Knew it. Before I even did it, I knew I'm going to knock that thing out of there. Let's see. Let me do this again. Let's go again. Get to go one more time here. Try to hold that in place. Make sure our line's not twisted up. Okay. Gotta hold the pads in. Now we just gotta get our bolts in here. They're slide pin bolts. Get that back in. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I don't even know what you're looking at. Probably didn't see a stinking thing that I just did. I don't know. I don't know if you did or not. The sun's wreaking havoc with me seeing what you're seeing. Really? Gonna give me grief, huh? There we go. Got one. Just get my bottom one. These only get about 20 to 25 foot-pounds. So just snug them up and don't break them off. They're not that big. I use my small gun again. Yes, I am turning my gun down a little bit so I don't crush these. We'll just snug them up. About it. Okay, you gotta torque these 2 bolts here. I'm going to torque these 2 bolts in the back to 98 foot-pounds, the mounting bracket bolts. That's it. Obviously, we're going to put the wheel back on here. That's all there is to it. But not a very hard job. If this is an uncoated rotor, I would coat the face of this with a light coat of grease as well. Keeps the wheel from sticking to it, corroding to it. And just makes it easier for the next person in here. That's about it. Come on. torqued, ready to go. Obviously we'll put the wheel back on, but we're done. Well, that's it for the 2010 Nissan Altima front brakes. Pump your brake pedal till it gets firm before you take it for a drive, or you're going to get a scary moment. I took it out and bedded the pads, which means I took it out, drove it up 40, 60 miles an hour, slow it down pretty aggressively, not coming to a complete stop. Do that a couple times, drive it, let it cool off a little bit for a couple minutes, repeat that cycle maybe 8 or 10 times, beds the pads to the rotors so they perform like they should. Not a very difficult job. If you need to do this for your 2010, well, 2007 to 2012 Nissan Altima, I hope it helps you out. If you like the video, subscribe below. Thanks for watching.